Hello, and welcome back to 10 Minutes With. Today I'm joined by Allison Watson, founder and CEO of Ring 20 Research and Support UK, to discuss ultra-rare diseases. Thank you for joining me, Allison.
Thank you for having me.
Can you introduce yourself to the people at home? Who are you? What do you do?
So, first and foremost, I'm mum to David. He's 28 now. He has Ring Chromosome 20 syndrome, which is a really rare form of epilepsy. Just like many other rare diseases, nobody's ever heard of them. And really, my journey has begun over 20 years ago when David had his first seizure, which we didn't know was a seizure. And when the doctors did investigations and said, we think your son has epilepsy, which from one seizure became 30 seizures every 24 hours,
Goodness.
You start to seek and want to find answers. And I found answers in the small community of families that I was able to be connected with. And I found how important that was, because when your child is diagnosed with an ultra-rare disease, your medical team just doesn't have any answers for you.
No.
And it's a really lonely place.
No, I'm sure. I mean, it's something we hear time and time again, that isolation and the loneliness at the point of diagnosis and then beyond is really something that so many people in our community are tackling. So can you explain, just for the people at home, you've said that David's condition, amongst many others, is considered an ultra-rare condition. What is ultra-rare and how is it different from what we describe as just rare diseases in general?
So that's a great question. So I would say, I don't think there is a working definition of ultra rare. Some people even talk about nano rare. In the case of Ring 20, in terms of the medical literature, they've counted about 200 cases around the world. Now, as a patient support group, we've connected with over 170 families. And we know that there are families in countries like Japan and Italy and even France who've not connected with us because of language barriers and time zone differences, even with auto-translates. So we know there are many more cases, but an ultra-rare disease is something where I would say there is very few cases, and as a direct result of very few cases, there's usually very, very little research and literature.
Yeah, you are the pioneer, shall we say, the whole time. You are the first person, or if not the first person, one of very few. And I imagine as well, it's very individual to each person. So even if it goes one way for one person in your very small community, you know, that's no guarantee of how it's going to go for everyone else.
Absolutely. And there's always, that's something that I've learned so much in working in rare diseases, is there's always a range, even with people with the same diagnosis. There's a range of phenotype, as we say, or the symptomology, from very mildly affected individuals to very, very severe and everything in between.
And so how did you go, you personally, how did you go from this very personal situation of, you know, your family and your son having and living this very scary experience to it becoming your entire professional world?
So it all kind of started probably back in about 2012 or even just before then. The patient group that I found when David was first diagnosed had folded a few years before. And as I mentioned, I found great power in connecting with a few other families. And it seemed like there was a huge gap, not only for people like me to continue to connect with other families, but also for new families being diagnosed in the future. So with a colleague, we decided that we would set up a brand new patient support group, because there wasn't one anywhere else in the world, which is so typical of ultra rare diseases. So we set about setting up a patient group charity, UK based, but supporting families wherever they are globally. If they can find us on Google, find us on Facebook, you know, we've got auto translations. We will try and communicate in whatever best way we can and provide information. We became a charity in 2014 and registered a couple of years after, and that's been quite a lot of my life
No,
from
I'm
then,
sure.
really.
I'm sure. And this theme of togetherness is kind of something that keeps coming up in different forms and is actually the title of another organisation that you've set up. Do you want to tell us a little bit more about that and what your goal is there?
So about 4 or 5 years ago, I set up UK Rare Epilepsies Together, or UK RET, as we call it. It's a network of patient organisations supporting people with rare and complex epilepsies that are UK based. And the reason I set that up was having spent 5 years in the Epic Area RN, looking at rare diseases on a regional scale. And I also did some work with RDI and looking at rare diseases on the global scale. But the key message that came through from there was, even though you need to look outwards for answers in rare, the best place that you can make influence is in your own country and influence your own national health systems, your own politicians, policymakers, and leverage the fantastic resources you have in country. And now, instead of me representing 40 people in the UK, collectively we're representing 200,000 individuals affected by difficult to treat epilepsies in the UK. So now we're a stronger voice that perhaps someone will stand up and listen.
And so, I mean, you've spoken there about obviously national level and seeking national level change within the UK. But this question, I suppose, could also apply to European level or global level. What would be your cry to policymakers about how they can make the biggest difference to the ultra rare community?
I think it's acknowledging ultra rare. Rare diseases and the ERNs was born out of a need to differentiate rare diseases from common diseases, so they didn't get left behind, the mantra that we all live by. But some of what I've seen within the rare disease community is, in some parts, we're seeing differentials between the more common rare diseases, the more well-known, and the many ultra nano rare diseases. And it would be a really sad place if we find a divide then within the rare disease community, because we need to come together. So I would say that, to policymakers, you need to acknowledge that we exist. I know you won't know that we exist as ultra rare diseases, ultra rare disease communities. We want to find you. And if we can come together, we will make it easier for you to find us. And hopefully we can work with you and you can help us as much as we can help you.
And so I think we've nicely covered some of the medical and, shall we say, policy related challenges of living with an ultra rare condition there. What would you say are the kind of the social aspects that come with those challenges? Because obviously, so often getting a diagnosis, people forget that more holistic view of life, of a person's experience of living with a rare disease.
So that's really, really important, because when you haven't got effective treatments, you have to learn to live every day of your life to the best that you can. And it's about finding coping mechanisms, practical coping mechanisms, and building a support network around you that will really help you to achieve that. And the biggest challenge there is that you're trying to talk to people in society, people you're engaging with, and trying to explain to them that you have a rare condition with a name that nobody can pronounce usually, as nobody's ever heard or familiar with. So that's a massive hurdle. So how do you try and overcome and find the right sorts of, get people to understand what your needs are and how best they can help you? And that's all about building and growing your support network. And I would say to any family out there, find ways to find people that will help you, whether that's helping your child in a school setting, getting them the support at school, whether it's in the clubs and activities, because rare disease should never be a barrier to participating in all the fun stuff in life too. It's just about making reasonable adjustment and ensuring that people don't discriminate. And then as the child gets older into adolescence, they want to seek more independence, and it's finding ways that they can do that safely. And whether that's opportunity in work or having a family of their own, and friendships and relationships. There's every aspect of life.
And speaking of that process of kind of making things not necessarily easy, but easier for yourself, or making that transition into your new life, your new chapter in life, a little easier, what are the tools or mechanisms that you personally have found useful in negotiating those relationships between either, the patient community and researchers, or when you're thrust into these new positions of being a patient expert and suddenly, you're in policy forums or you're in very scientific, technical forums? How have you found ways to cope with that?
So I think you've said the word, it's becoming the patient expert. And it's really upskilling yourself. You can't leave it to somebody else to have all of the answers, because the answers aren't there yet. So the best you can do for yourself and your family is to learn as much as you can about the condition, find out what's going on and what we know and what we don't know today. Find groups like your Awardee who can provide free training and opportunities that really give you the tools and the confidence to be able to talk to other people about your condition and talk to people that you feel you shouldn't be speaking to. You just don't know where it's going to lead. But you've got to be seen to be heard.
You have to take that initial leap.
You've got to get out there.
And we always like to end all of these episodes by turning it back to the people at home. So to the average person, either a family member who maybe is finding a lot of solace in your words as they think someone in their world maybe has a rare form of epilepsy, or just anyone in the rare disease community who, like you say, is just maybe not particularly familiar with what ultra rare and nano rare conditions are, what would be your kind of message to them to end this on?
So I would say to any family facing a new ultra rare disease diagnosis, reach out. Yes, the internet can be a very dangerous space. Dr. Google, don't believe everything you read, but reach out and find community, because there are communities out there, some very small, 2 or 3 families, others hundreds or thousands of families. Somewhere in the world is going through what you're going through. And if you can find those other families, you will find your community. We say, find your tribe. And that power of connection is the most that you can have when medicine doesn't have the answers yet. So reach out, find your tribe.
Find your tribe. I think that's perfect. Thank you. You've been watching 10 Minutes with Rhiannon W. Make sure to tune in next time.